and welcome to this episode of Talk of the Town. You know, on Talk of the Town, we like to go around Arlington talking to the people, the agencies, and the organizations that make life in town as good as we all enjoy it to be. And today, we are going to be visiting once again with Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine. Most recently, the Department of Energy Resources has given another green grant to Arlington. And just to give you some idea about the figures that we're talking about, this most recent grant is just short of $180,000, as I understand it. And cumulatively, since 2010, we're now up to close to 1.4 million in grants from this particular program. So that's an impressive, that number got my attention right away. And again, as I said, appreciate your being here to talk to us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is the 180,000 that we've just recently been awarded, is that already designated for particular programs, or is that a pot of money that you can choose to allot where you want going forward?
It is for pre-designated projects. So the way the Green Communities Grant Program works now, the first time you go for a grant, when you become a green community, you get an automatic allocation for various projects, and then after that, it's competitive. So you have to submit a grant application telling them specifically what you're going to do, how much energy savings that will produce, what the cost will be, and then what the payback will be. So,
and that's very specific dollars, you're saying?
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. So in the application, you have to put together a spreadsheet that puts together cost estimates for specific projects, what you think the energy reduction will be, the carbon reduction, and then how quick the payback is on that energy savings. So this was very specific projects we applied for.
What kinds of either infrastructure or other kinds of projects are generally meant to be covered by these green grants?
So generally speaking, it's HVAC and lighting. This year, as I'm sure we'll get to, they were really promoting looking at electric vehicle technology as part of the Green Communities Grant. But historically, it's been boilers, pieces of boilers, lighting equipment, as those usually have the best payback. Usually you can make a reasonable investment and have it pay back pretty quickly, which is what the state wants to see when you're submitting a Green Communities application. Is
the grant itself intended for all kinds of public buildings? For instance, here we are in Town Hall. If there were, if there was a project that made sense here at Town Hall, would that be the same kind of thing?
Yeah, so town and school buildings are considered the same under Green Communities. You said it very well. School buildings there's a lot of school buildings in town. They're one of our major energy users. They're open a lot. There's a lot of lights, a lot of rooms. So the payback on school projects usually works out pretty well because of the length of use of the buildings. But we could certainly look at a building like this. I think we've been the beneficiary of having recently renovated all three of our fire stations and the police station. So some of our other main general government buildings have been recently renovated. LEED Silver certified in the Highland Fire Station, LEED Gold certified in the Central Station, and LEED Silver certified at the Community Safety Building. So they basically had their energy efficient retrofits all in the past 3 to 4 years. So we haven't really necessarily needed to look to the Green Communities Grant to help us retrofit those buildings to be more energy efficient.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, is there any connection between these renovations, these projects that will be taking place in a number of the school buildings, and the fact that school enrollment, as we have often talked about before, is an ongoing issue here in Arlington? So there's going to be more students. We can expect that there will be continue to be as many or more students in all of these buildings. Any connection between those two things? In other words, are we going to see even greater payback, I guess, for these projects, simply because as you said, it's already a place where things are being used a lot of hours of the day, et cetera? Do we anticipate that this will either enable us to, or at least work in conjunction with us, making even more use of these buildings?
So I guess I would say at best what this can do is, by reducing the cost of energy that we use, or not actually reducing the cost of the energy, but reducing the amount of energy we use, the schools will realize savings, and then those savings can be repurposed into other parts of providing education. So this particular grant is, not huge amounts of savings to be realized, but still every dollar counts. So I think the expected savings from the 3 school projects is about $20,000 a year. So if that means next year the superintendent and the CFO, when they're putting together the school budget, says, oh, well, we don't need to allocate that $20,000 to electricity, we can allocate it to instruction, whatever it might be. I think, though, again, small, it can go towards the, the mounting demands they have to educate the growing student enrollment.
Yeah, I think in this particular area, every last, I mean, sure, it's true in general, but every last dollar seems like it is going to count a lot when it comes to funding the schools and our students' education over the coming years. Take us back a little bit about, I mentioned that it's been about close to 1.4 million over the course of these 7 years. What are some of the projects that either you might be particularly proud of, or that people that may have a direct impact on people's lives without them yet knowing, that have been funded through green grants over the course of these 7 years?
So the big one, the most publicly noticeable, and the one that I'm probably most proud of because I was most heavily involved with, is the LED streetlight retrofit that we started with Green Communities money. So we received the Green Communities grant back in 2011, which jump-started that LED retrofit. So that's been saving the town nearly $100,000 a year every year since we retrofitted all of the streetlights to LED. Again, obviously very publicly noticeable. We went from that dull yellow high-pressure sodium light to LED streetlights. So that was sort of the big, most public-facing Green Communities project. Going on from that, we've done LED, interior LED light changeovers. We've done LED exterior lighting on this building, for example, at Town Hall, and some other buildings so that the spotlights are LED. We've made a number of HVAC improvements, most usually by installing variable speed or variable frequency drives on boilers or other HVAC equipment. And that just means that traditional drives spin at the same rate constantly, no matter how much energy or heat is being produced by a heating unit. These VFDs or VSDs spin only as fast as they need to spin. So they use electricity. And the utilities love them because they help the utilities meet their energy efficiency goals, so they give very high rebates for the implementation of those drives. We love them because we save money, and the Green Communities division loves them because they save money, reduce carbon, and whatnot. So yeah, building by building, we've done audits of various buildings under the leadership of first energy manager and now facilities director, Ruthie Bennett. She's really looked at every building, sort of one by one to see where we can make investments. And yeah, we've looked at lighting, we've looked at HVAC, and I think we've even replaced a boiler in one school, the Green Communities grant. And then finally, very sort of inside baseball, but maybe the most exciting thing we've done with Green Communities money is implemented something called fault detection and diagnostic software within our energy management systems on 2 of our schools, first at the Pierce and then at the Brackett, both funded by Green Communities. And what that does is it gives you a real-time readout on how the entire HVAC system is working in the school. So it could be that a classroom heats up at night and no one's there and no one ever knows that you're wasting that energy. But by using this system, you get a real-time readout that someone can come in the morning and look at and see that that's occurring. Or they could see that a little fan on a rooftop unit is not working, or whatever it might be, and dispatch an electrician or an HVAC technician and fix it near immediately, so that instead of potentially losing a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 a year in lost efficiency, you can get it working right within a week's time, 2 weeks' time, and all of a sudden you've gained all that back. So that's sort of cutting edge for local government. It's I think it's a technology that's been used pretty broadly in large, more industrial complexes. Microsoft uses it on its corporate campus. A lot of malls use it. But Ruthie Bennett brought that here when she became facilities director, and it's been used so far very successfully.
Well, I can imagine that they could have come up with a sexier title for it, obviously. But you've explained really well what you're talking about, which is this is a very, very valuable innovation because you are getting information that is actionable information that you otherwise
might never
have
know.
Gotten,
yes.
Maybe ever, and certainly not till too late or till a certain amount of money had been wasted, it seems. So that's great. We've been talking about the success that Arlington has enjoyed with this program over the years, and so that begs the question, who is responsible for writing the grants that get approved here, or writing the applications, and then for overseeing these projects to make sure that everything goes according to plan?
So it's a great question, and it gives me the opportunity to just give huge thanks and credit to Ruthie Bennett, who is our facilities director. We hired her, I think, 4 years ago now as a regional energy manager, working for both Bedford and Arlington, and she has since been promoted to facilities director, and she has been sort of the driving force behind most of our energy efficiency and renewable energy endeavors. She writes these green communities grants, and as the facilities director, her and her staff manage the implementation. She also, we're in between energy managers right now, so our prior energy manager did some work on this grant, and we're very excited that we have a new energy manager starting in July, who was most recently the executive director of the Environmental League of Massachusetts, a gentleman named Ken Pruitt. So we're very excited to have him on board, and yeah, it's been a really great team. Ruthie is, she's the general facilities director, but is someone who is very passionate about energy efficiency and sustainability, so having someone in that key leadership role has just paid dividends in this regard.
Many of the projects that we've been talking about, if you leave aside the electric vehicles especially, have to do with improving infrastructure in some way within public buildings in town. Are there initiatives around sustainability and improving sustainable practices that are happening outside of the town buildings that you could share with us?
Absolutely, and I think there's a couple facets of that. I think probably the number one thing that the town does in terms of sustainability that is done so well and has been happening for so long that it doesn't get a lot of attention anymore is our solid waste effort and our recycling efforts. Charlotte, who you may know, does a great job as our recycling coordinator, running the community collection days, the recycling centers, our single stream recycling program, looking at innovative ways to do composting. So we have a lot of attention paid via the recycling committee and again the recycling coordinator on our solid waste efforts, and that our solid waste tonnage has gone down dramatically over the past 10 years. So we talk a lot about energy efficiency today. So much great work has been done on solid waste, and we look forward to that continuing. Outside of that, we have a complete streets policy, so really everything we do now in terms of roadway design or major roadway design is looking at trying to get more pedestrians, more bicyclists, to just interact more safely and better with vehicles. So we have complete streets. I mean, really East Arlington was a complete streets project. We're implementing our first complete streets grant on Gray Street right now. We're beginning the design of an improvement of the intersection of the bikeway in Lake Street, which should hopefully make it better for every user. And from a sustainability point of view, should reduce congestion. There's a lot of unnecessary starting and stopping around that intersection. We're looking at putting a light at the bikeway that is in conjunction with a light at Brooks Ave, so cars know when to go, bikes know when to go, and we can reduce the congestion there. So that's another piece of it. Last year, I think ACMI covered most of it. We went through a conceptual planning process for Mass Ave in the center of town. Again, a lot of focus on bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure. So again, we're just trying to get more people out, moving around in alternative means of transportation. We've also applied for a grant with the Barr Foundation to look at bus rapid transit along the 77 bus route corridor. It's probably, might be a little controversial to talk about it because we would be either looking at using a travel lane or the parking lane in the morning to get the 77, the 350, and the 79 down Mass Ave and either through the crossing with the Parkway or to Alewife faster. Everett has done it successfully, and now the Barr Foundation is working to try to get more communities to experiment with it. So if we get the grant, we've applied for a $100,000 grant, we would do some studying, pilot some options. We wouldn't be doing any infrastructure changes before piloting them. You can do it simply with cones to see what might work. And again, hopefully if we can get people out of cars and into the bus, you reduce congestion, it's a more sustainable approach, and you move people around the area and get them to work better. So that would be the goal of doing that. And then finally, sort of tied back to the electric vehicles, we talked about what we're doing with electric vehicles in town. We're also currently just about to install 2 electric vehicle charging stations in the Russell Common lot for public use. So we're also trying to not just use electric vehicles ourselves, but build the infrastructure for citizens and visitors to use so that we can hopefully be part of promoting that infrastructure for sustainability going forward.
Bringing us back to the current grant, and you have already mentioned this, but I just want to ask you about it a little bit further, and that is electric vehicles. I noticed that there are, I think, 2 electric vehicles. So a couple of questions about that. One is, will the grant cover the entire cost, or more or less the entire cost of these? And secondly, how do you expect to use those vehicles? I know, for instance, that you have one yourself for your own use. Is that the only one that's in town, kind of a public official car at the moment? And are you just expecting to add 2 more for the use of other officials, or just tell us a little bit about how that's going to work?
Absolutely. I'm a super electric vehicle nerd, so I could talk for a long time about it. But to answer the first question, the Green Communities Grant will pay for the entire acquisition of the vehicles, but we've partnered it up with another state grant called the Electric Vehicle Incentive Program to be able to buy the charging technology. So we're getting grant money to install the chargers and grant money to buy the vehicles, so it will be fully covered by the combination of those 2 grants. So yeah, it's great win-win. And the state has been very invested in trying to roll out electric vehicle infrastructure, so I think they're very happy to see communities trying to help roll that out. So in terms of how we'll use it, you're right. So I drive a plug-in Prius, which it's a hybrid, but also plug-in. So I can go about 12 miles on an all-electric charge before it goes back to the hybrid technology. We have a number of other just strictly hybrids in building inspections and in the health department. The police department has started purchasing for their unmarked vehicles all Ford Fusion hybrids. So we've been somewhat successful in rolling out hybrid technology, but we have still yet to really bend the curve on our fuel cost or our fuel use year over year. And that's to do with big trucks, the fire department and DPW, but we're still trying sort of vehicle by vehicle to get more efficient. So we hope to use these 2 electric vehicles, which we plan on having to purchase Chevy Bolts, which is that very new to market Chevy car that's going to get over 200 miles per charge, which is sort of a paradigm changer or just a game changer for people's comfort with being able to travel with those vehicles and not get stuck without a charge. So the plan right now is to have the Board of Health use one for inspections to replace an old Crown Victoria. So that Crown Victoria is probably getting 12 miles to the gallon. If it's lucky, this will be getting a much higher much better return in terms of electricity or power used. And then the other one we're going to give down to DPW. I believe the tree warden will be driving it. So we're still working out some of the logistics of where we'll install the chargers for each of those uses. But yeah, I mean, if it's not emergency response, if it doesn't need to be on the road in heavy snow conditions, we're trying to roll them out for municipal use.
Yeah, and great to know that it's going to be this Chevy Volt, not to plug Chevy, but again, because my understanding also has been that that's been a big obstacle in people's perception, at least, just the amount of miles you can get before you need to recharge the vehicle. You said about your own that it's 12 before you're moving into the hybrid technology, so that's not going to sell anybody on it, I don't think. But 200, I have heard, beyond what you say, just what's out there, that really is a kind of tipping point to where they're hopeful that there will be much wider adoption of this, and great for us to be able to do so in this case. So let's then look forward if we can. The stream has been quite consistent over the course of these 7 years through this grant program. And I know that part of what has made that the case is that we have demonstrated as a town, and I want to give full credit to you and the rest of the leadership of town for kind of shepherding us through this. We've demonstrated as a town that we've made very good use of the money that we received in the first years of this program. So I think that means that we are better candidates to continue to receive money through the program. So assuming that it's a state program, right?
Correct.
So assuming that it can continue to move forward unencumbered by federal policy and other things of concern. What are some of the kinds of things that you can imagine, using this money to fund in part or in whole going forward?
So that is an excellent question. And I think your take is right that we're in a good position to be looked on favorably by the state. But the landscape has changed since they created the Green Communities Division some almost 8-9 years ago. So we were one of the first 35 communities to become a green community. Now there's 185 green communities. So the pot of money has grown a little bit, but not at that same rate of growth. So the competition is stiffer and stiffer for the grant funds. And I think they like us very much. We get projects done. I think we make the Green Communities Division look good in terms of being a green community and how well we do our projects. But I think they also probably feel pressure to spread the resources around to some communities that are newer to being green communities and probably haven't got as much done as we have. So that will be a challenge we will face in years to come. Probably the bigger challenge is we have taken down most of the low-hanging fruit in terms of energy efficiency. We've probably even reached into some of the fruit that you can get one step up the ladder. So it's, we've done really well here. With the energy working group, with the facilities director, with the energy manager, we've really continued to step up our game year over year. So I think the next step for us is figuring out bigger picture, longer term. Can we start to look at different fuel sources? So is there a way we can get off natural gas? Is there a way we can generate more renewable electricity with solar installations and then store that with batteries? So I think the future for us is looking at, there's still little energy efficiency things we can do, certainly. But the future for us is bigger picture, longer term. How do we be a resilient community? How do we adapt for climate change? And how do we really start to think about a big time paradigm shift in how we use energy and power our buildings?
And do you see us at just really the very beginning stages of that very large and ambitious project, particularly as it relates to, say, climate change or, very large, amorphous, generally scary, but hard to figure out how municipal policy figures into that? Are we just barely starting down this road at this point?
I would say yes. And there's a couple things happening. It was very interesting. We had an energy working group meeting just this past Friday, and the people in the energy working group are amazing. Just these very smart, well-educated, experienced people who care so much about climate change, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and they give their time to the community. And when I first came here, it was the energy working group pushing the administration, so to speak, to do these things. And then over time, it shifted a little bit towards the administration working hand in hand, and then almost pulling along the energy working group, like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, and everybody was happy that it was all happening, but there didn't necessarily need to be a lot of push. I think because of achieving some of those, or reaching those low-hanging fruit, it's shifted back now to the energy working group, and its members are pushing again for those next steps. And that was what happened on Friday. It's, hey, we've done all these great things. What is the next step? And those awesome volunteers have really started to push us again to say, here's the next step you should be looking at, and here's what you should do. So that's still on the fuel use source, right? Is it natural gas? Is it electric? What are we using for heating, cooling, our buildings, turning on lights, and so on and so forth. The other side of it is actual climate change adaptation or preparation. So the state has also rolled out something called the MVP program, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, and they want to help cities and towns get ready for climate change to see where your vulnerabilities might be and how you can plan for them. So under the lead of Jenny Raitt and Nat Strasberg in planning, we are now an MVP community, and we received a $23,000 grant from the state under that program to start studying what exactly our municipal vulnerability might be in terms of climate change. So I think over the fall, we're going to start rolling out a broader public dialogue about climate change adaptation and what we need to be thinking about as a community and what we need to do.
Yeah, and we will look forward to that. I bet that's going to draw a significant public response and attention, yeah. So just to wrap up, a couple of last things. One is, you had mentioned that we've kind of over the course of these years of enjoying success within this program, we've picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit, as you put it. Does that mean that basically these 3 schools that are going to be having some renovations done, I assume, just as you've said before, around HVAC systems and things like that, under the current grant, is that near the end of the school building renovation process? Is that the low-hanging fruit that you were talking about? Can we assume that our schools are well set in this way, at least moving forward?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, we're well set. Yeah, so we have the bracket we're putting in, over 300 new LED fixtures. The Ottoson School, the middle school, we're putting in over 200 LED fixtures. And at the Dallin, we're putting in one of those VFDs and some HVAC work to be more efficient there. So generally speaking, yes, I do think most of that low-hanging fruit is achieved. There are still some schools and town buildings where there are older boilers, older heating systems. Like here in Town Hall, it's a steam heating system. So to change it to a more energy efficient system is very, very expensive. And there's no payback argument to do it, right? There's no financial argument for it to be done. So there are still situations like that here and in some of the other, probably in some of the schools as well. So those will continue to be on our radar, and if technology changes, updates, adapts, we'll be able to pounce on that and hopefully make those improvements. But I want to be clear, it's not that every single building is fully energy efficient. It's just those things that are ripe, easy to do, cost effective, fundable, have been done or are soon to be done.
Okay, that's great. And I just, again, wanted to reiterate, just to make sure I have it clear, that what you were saying about the near to longer term future of this program is there's a slightly larger pool of money available to many, many more communities. They may have incentives to be, they, meaning the program administrators, may have incentives to encourage growth in other communities. We have done very well so far with the money, but also by the, through having the money, we've done very well for ourselves as well. So we shouldn't anticipate that this is a cash cow that will be continuing to deliver over the next, 3 to 5 years necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I don't want it to be a negative takeaway, but
No,
also
sure.
an expectation setting takeaway
Right.
that,
Right, exactly.
we'll continue to apply for what we can apply for, but yeah, the competition's getting stiffer and stiffer. And I think from an Arlington perspective, it might not always yield the result we want, but as a citizen of the world, citizen of the Commonwealth, I think it's a great thing that there's more and more communities that are starting to care about these things. I mean, there are still communities that have not yet changed over to LED streetlights. It's something we did here quite a while ago, embraced pretty well by the community. But yeah, there's a lot of communities that can start saving, reducing carbon, saving money tomorrow if they start rolling some of these things out. So I think, again, as citizens of the Commonwealth, we should want to see that happen as well.
Yes, well put. I mean, we can always be, look around us and be happy and content and proud of what was happening within our community and encouraged by that. But we are, as you say, not just citizens of this town, but of the state, of the country, et cetera. Yeah. And, would that the money is well used in other communities as it has been here. We should all be satisfied and happy with that, I would say. All right, well, thank you very much, Adam, for spending some time with us today. That is a comprehensive update on the Green Communities Program, or the Green Grants Program, that we've been participating in for these 7-8 years now. We will return to talk to Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine about this subject and others in the future. But that wraps it for today's Talk of the Town. Thanks for joining us.